something isn't adding up, and the internet might have been played. Over the past few days, a shocking story has gone viral, claiming that Cardi B broke down in tears after DNA test results revealed Offset is the father of her newborn, not Stefon Diggs. The headlines exploded. Social media picked sides. And just like that, a private situation turned into a full-blown public scandal. But here's the twist no one is talking about. What if the DNA test everyone is reacting to never actually happened? Behind the viral tweets, emotional reactions, and messy rumors, there's a much more complicated story involving a divorce battle, legal loopholes, and a timeline that doesn't quite fit the narrative being pushed online. And right in the middle of it all, 3 major names, 1 newborn child, and a courtroom decision that changes everything. Now, people are asking, did Offset really prove anything? Did Stefon Diggs actually walk away? Or did the internet run with a story before the facts were even confirmed? Because once you look closer at what really went down, the truth starts to look very different from what you've been told. And trust me, this is where it gets messy. The story really starts inside a courtroom. Not on Instagram, not on Twitter, and definitely not from a viral live stream. Because while the internet was busy reacting to headlines, something much more important had already happened behind closed doors involving Cardi B and Offset. Back in February 2026, during their ongoing divorce proceedings, Offset made a move that would later spark all this chaos. He formally requested DNA testing. Not just casually, not through social media, but through the court system. That alone tells you this wasn't just drama. It was legal. Now here's where things get interesting. Offset didn't just ask for 1 test. He reportedly requested testing related to 2 children. And from a legal standpoint, that might sound shocking at first, but there's actually a reason he was even allowed to make that request in the first place. You see, even though Cardi B and Offset have been separated and moving on with their lives, they were still legally married when her newborn was born. And in family law, that detail matters more than most people realize. Because when a child is born during a marriage, the husband can have what's known as a presumption of paternity. In simple terms, the law may initially assume that the husband is the father, regardless of public relationships or rumors. That doesn't mean it's true biologically, but it does mean he has legal standing to ask questions. So when Offset filed that request, he wasn't just stirring up drama. He was using a legal right that came from the fact that the divorce wasn't finalized yet. But then came the judge's decision. And this is the part that completely flips the viral narrative. According to reports tied to that court order, the judge made a split ruling. 1 request was approved. The other was denied. Let that sink in. The court did allow a DNA test in connection to 1 child. But when it came to the newborn, the baby widely believed to be with Stefon Diggs, the judge said no. No test, no approval, no follow-up. And that single decision changes everything. Because if the court denied the DNA test for the newborn, then there is no official test result. Which means the entire viral claim that results confirmed Offset as the father has no legal foundation. There's no document supporting it. No court-approved test backing it up. Nothing. And yet, the internet ran with it anyway. Now, think about how fast things escalated. Within hours of that court information becoming public, social media platforms were flooded with reactions. People were quoting supposed statements, sharing screenshots, and building an entire narrative around something that, legally speaking, never even happened. That's how quickly perception can become truth online. But to really understand why this situation exploded the way it did, you have to look at the timing and the relationships involved. Because by the time this court filing surfaced, Cardi B wasn't just dealing with a divorce from Offset. She was also coming off a complicated and emotional chapter with Stefon Diggs. Their relationship had already been under pressure. Reports suggested ups and downs, trust issues, and even a possible split around the time of a major football event. So when people saw headlines about DNA tests and paternity questions, it didn't come out of nowhere. It landed on top of an already shaky situation. And that made it easier for people to believe the worst. At the same time, older rumors started resurfacing. Posts, screenshots, and claims from months earlier suddenly came back into the spotlight. One of the biggest was an alleged social media post from Offset around the time the baby was born, where he supposedly hinted at being the father. Even though that post was never fully confirmed and was later denied, it planted a seed. And once that seed was there, it didn't take much for it to grow into something bigger. So by the time the court filing became public, the internet already had a storyline in mind. All it needed was something that looked like proof. And that's exactly what people thought they got, even though the reality was very different. Because again, no DNA test for the newborn was approved, which means no official results exist. But here's where things take another turn. Despite all the rumors, despite the supposed fallout, and despite the narrative that everything had collapsed between Cardi B and Stefon Diggs, something unexpected happened. Instead of distancing himself, instead of making a statement, instead of reacting publicly the way people assumed he would, Diggs showed up. Not online, not in a tweet, in real life. He attended one of Cardi B's shows. Not alone either. He brought his family with him. And after the performance, the two were seen leaving together. Now, think about that for a second. If the viral claims were true, if there really had been a DNA test proving something that dramatic, would that be the reaction you'd expect? Or does that moment suggest something else entirely? Because actions like that don't line up with the story people were telling online. And that's what makes this situation so complicated. On one side, you have legal facts, a denied DNA test, an ongoing divorce, and no confirmed results. On the other side, you have internet narratives, emotional reactions, viral tweets, and assumptions filling in the gaps. And somewhere in between all of that is the truth. But we're not even at the most intense part yet. Because once you start looking at the timeline of relationships, the public statements, and what was happening behind the scenes leading up to all of this, the situation gets even more layered. And the next part of the story might completely change how you see everything that's happened so far. To really understand how everything reached this point, you have to go back to when Cardi B and Stefon Diggs first became linked, because their timeline is a big reason why so many people were quick to believe the rumors. At first, it didn't even seem real. Around late 2024, there were quiet whispers online that Cardi B and Diggs had been seen together. Nothing confirmed. Just sightings, speculation, and fans trying to connect dots. At the time, Cardi was already in the middle of her divorce from Offset, so naturally, people were watching closely. But Cardi pushed back. She went live, addressed the rumors, and made it seem like people were reaching. And for a moment, it worked. The noise died down, but not for long. Because by early 2025, it became impossible to ignore. They were spotted together more than once. Public places, major cities, moments that didn't look accidental. First a nightclub appearance, then a high-profile Valentine's Day sighting. At that point, it wasn't just gossip anymore. It was becoming real. And eventually, Cardi confirmed it. What started as rumors turned into a public relationship. Social media posts, public outings, even courtside appearances at major basketball games. It was clear they weren't hiding anymore. And from the outside looking in, it seemed like Cardi had moved on into something new, something stable. But timelines matter, because while this new relationship was building, the divorce with Offset was still active. Nothing had been finalized. Legally, emotionally, everything was still in motion. And then came the announcement that changed everything. During a major interview, Cardi revealed she was pregnant and made it clear that the baby was with Stefon Diggs. She didn't hesitate. She didn't leave room for speculation. She sounded confident, even excited. For a moment, it felt like a fresh start, a new relationship, a new child, a new chapter. But behind that moment, there were already cracks forming. Because while Cardi was stepping into this new phase publicly, Diggs had his own complicated personal life that wasn't getting as much attention, but it mattered. Reports and discussions around. His past relationships, children, and ongoing situations started surfacing more heavily. It painted a picture that wasn't as simple as it looked from the outside. And when you combine that with a high-profile relationship, pressure builds fast. Still, things moved forward. In November 2025, Cardi gave birth to her baby boy, her fourth child overall, and her first with Diggs. It should have been a moment of celebration. And publicly it was. But almost immediately, the noise started again. Questions, doubts, old rumors resurfacing. That alleged social media post from Offset? It came back into the conversation. People started reanalyzing timelines, comparing dates, trying to find overlaps, anything that could support the idea that something didn't add up. Even if there was no proof, the conversation had already started. And once people start questioning paternity, especially in a situation this public, it doesn't just go away. At the same time, Cardi's relationship with Diggs wasn't as solid as people assumed. By early 2026, things reportedly began to shift. There were signs of distance, subtle changes in how they interacted publicly, less visibility together. And then came reports that they had split right around one of the biggest moments in Diggs' career. Think about the timing. A newborn baby, a high-pressure professional moment, a relationship under public scrutiny, and on top of that, unresolved legal ties to Offset. That's not a stable situation. That's pressure from every direction. And according to reports, trust became a major issue. There were claims that something happened around that time that made Cardi pull back completely, that she decided to focus on herself, her children, and her career instead of trying to fix what was breaking. And if that's true, it adds another layer to why the DNA rumors spread so fast. Because from the outside, it looked like everything was falling apart at once. So when the court filing about DNA testing became public, people didn't question it. They accepted it. It fit perfectly into the narrative that was already forming. Of course there's a paternity issue. Of course things overlapped. Of course this is messy. That's how the internet thinks. But reality isn't always that simple. Because while all of this was happening, while breakup rumors were spreading, while people were questioning timelines, while legal documents were being analyzed, Cardi was still very much in the public eye. She was performing, touring, speaking to fans. And at one of those performances, something happened that didn't match the narrative at all. During a live show, she went on a rant, seemingly emotional, possibly referencing betrayal, trust, and everything she had been dealing with. Fans immediately connected it to Diggs. It felt personal. Clips spread quickly. People assumed this was confirmation that things were over, that whatever they had was completely done. But then she walked it back. She went on social media and suggested that not everything said on stage should be taken literally, that sometimes performance is just performance. And that created confusion. Were they broken up? Were they still connected? Was this all just emotional expression, or was something deeper? No one had a clear answer. And right in the middle of that confusion, the court filing dropped. Timing like that doesn't just add fuel to the fire, it explodes it. Because now, instead of just relationship drama, there was a legal angle. Something official. Something people could point to and say, see, this proves it. Except it didn't. Because again, the most important detail, the denial of the DNA test for the newborn, was either ignored or misunderstood by most people sharing the story. And that's how the narrative got out of control. But what happened next made things even more intense. Because just as the internet reached its peak in speculation, another real-world event shifted the entire situation and pulled everyone involved into an even more complicated spotlight. By the time the situation reached its peak, everything was happening at once. Legal tension, emotional fallout, and non-stop online speculation. And at the center of it all was still Cardi B, trying to navigate a life that had become impossible to separate from public opinion. But then came the moment that shifted the tone of the entire story. Around the same period the court filing started circulating, Cardi's personal world was already under pressure. She had just come out of a turbulent phase with Offset, with divorce proceedings still ongoing and emotions clearly unresolved. At the same time, her relationship with Stefon Diggs was also under a microscope, with rumors of distance, tension, and uncertainty spreading across social media. And that's exactly why the internet reacted so strongly when the DNA story went viral. Because it didn't feel like just one issue. It felt like everything collapsing at once. But what people didn't see in real time was how much of that collapse was being driven by speculation rather than confirmed fact. The key detail never changed. The court had denied a DNA test for the newborn. That means no official testing, no verified result, and no legal confirmation of paternity disputes regarding that child. Yet online, that missing piece was quietly replaced with assumptions. And those assumptions spread faster than the truth. While the internet debated, Cardi continued performing. Her tour became a release valve for everything happening behind the scenes. At one show, she delivered a highly emotional moment on stage. Fans immediately interpreted it as a direct reference to her personal life. Clips went viral within hours, with people connecting every word to Diggs and Offset. But later, she publicly suggested that not everything spoken on stage should be taken literally. That performances often mix emotion, art, and storytelling in ways that don't always reflect direct real-life events. That clarification didn't slow the conversation. It actually made it worse. Because now people weren't sure what was real, what was performance, and what was reaction. And in that confusion, narratives filled the gap. At the same time, something unexpected happened that didn't fit the breakup storyline at all. Despite all the rumors suggesting separation between Cardi and Diggs, he appeared at one of her tour stops. Not only did he show up, but he also brought family members with him. Cameras and fans captured him attending the show, watching closely from the audience, and engaging like someone still very much present in her life. Even more surprising, after the performance, the two were seen leaving together. No public statement, no dramatic exit, no visible conflict, just a quiet departure side by side. That moment directly challenged the online narrative that he had walked away because of DNA results or paternity drama. Because if that version of events were true, the public behavior would likely have looked very different. Instead, what people saw was something far more complicated. Two individuals still interacting, still connected in some capacity, despite everything swirling around them. And that's what makes this entire situation so difficult to define. Because on one hand, you have a real divorce case between Cardi and Offset, a legitimate court filing involving DNA test requests, a denied request for testing on the newborn. But on the other hand, you have viral tweets claiming results that don't exist, emotional interpretations presented as fact, social media, filling in gaps with speculation, and those two worlds collided. Hard. By the time fact-checking started catching up, the narrative had already spread too far. People had already formed opinions, picked sides, and shared conclusions that weren't supported by any verified legal outcome. And the most important correction remained the same throughout everything. There are no confirmed DNA test results regarding the newborn child. The court did not approve testing, which means the viral claim at the center of the story is not supported by any official record. But even with that clarified, the story didn't fully end there. Because situations like this, where relationships, fame, legal battles, and social media all overlap, don't resolve cleanly. They evolve. They continue. They resurface in new forms. And as of now, what remains is uncertainty. Not confirmation. Not closure. Just unanswered questions, ongoing legal proceedings, and a public narrative that keeps shifting depending on who is telling it. So the real takeaway isn't about a viral headline or a trending tweet. It's about how quickly misinformation spreads when real lives, real relationships, and incomplete facts collide in the public eye. And in this case, the internet didn't just report the story. It helped create it. And that's where things stand right now, between courtroom filings, viral claims, and a story that's still unfolding in real time. But here's the bigger question. How much of what you saw online was actually fact? And how much was just the internet running ahead of reality? Because as we've seen, there are no confirmed DNA results, no official paternity confirmation for the newborn, and a lot of the biggest claims circulating online are based on speculation, not verified court outcomes. So before you believe the next viral headline, pause and look deeper. Ask where the information is coming from. Is it a real legal document? A credible news outlet? Or just a screenshot designed to go viral? This story is a perfect example of how fast narratives can spread, and how easily they can be misunderstood when emotions take over facts. If you found this breakdown helpful and want more real explanations behind viral celebrity stories, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Because in a world full of rumors, the truth always takes a little longer to catch up.